Hello and welcome to Access Sportsnet Lakers. I'm your host, Mike Trudell, joined by Alan Sliwa from ESPN LA 710 and Brian Kamenetsky from the Locked On Lakers podcast. Slee, I was so excited to see you, but I wasn't sure how to get your name out right away. So we haven't been able to watch Lakers playoff games. Unfortunately, what have you been watching instead?
I mean, I got to catch up on Ozark.
Yeah,
I've been watching some soccer, but getting some playoff games in where I can.
NBA playoffs. Yeah. Ozark is amazing. Better Call Saul. Got to mix that in for a little bit of streaming there.
Haven't started that one yet. Okay, well, we'll break all that down further. First, though, how about we start with the ongoing Lakers coaching search? And according to Shams Charania of The Athletic, Lakers are requesting permission to interview Raptors assistant Adrian Griffin for the head coaching vacancy. How about a little look at Griffin's resume? So 9 seasons as an NBA player, Boston, Dallas, Houston, Chicago, Seattle, and the Bucks assistant coach. I mean, this is a general resume of a longtime assistant coach, guys, but you probably haven't heard his name a ton because he hasn't had that head coaching spot. Any initial thoughts on Griffin?
I mean, a well-respected player. I think that's the start of it. And then with assistant coaches, it's difficult unless you're inside to know exactly what each one of these guys is doing with their respective teams. But I think a really good shorthand for fans as they start to go through this process is look at who they're working for. And you go back and Adrian Griffin worked for Tom Thibodeau in Chicago back when, Tibbs was very successful and some of the shine hadn't quite come off of that. Billy Donovan in Oklahoma City, he worked on that staff, and Billy Donovan's turned into a very successful NBA coach. And now he works for Nick Nurse. Last 4 seasons with Nick Nurse in Toronto. And I'm not sure if people would put him at the very top of the league. Maybe Eric Spoelstra is, I think, the consensus best coach in the league. But Nick Nurse is on everybody's top 5. And so he's worked for a lot of very successful coaches.
I think the question it comes down to, for me, it has more to do with he could potentially be a good head coach in the NBA. We just don't know. We don't know because he hasn't been a head coach. And I think for the Lakers, and you're looking at the pressure that's on this franchise to find a way this offseason to figure things out and be competitive next year, I'm not saying he can't be a good coach, but am I a little uncomfortable with somebody that doesn't have a lot of coaching experience as a head coach? Personally, I would be.
All right, so Lakers reportedly also asked permission to interview Darvin Ham, the assistant coach with the Bucks, and we know that he has some history with the Lakers as well. So another longtime assistant coach, right? Another player who was a role player in his days. Any different thoughts? Does that fit into that same kind of box?
Well, I mean, I'll say I guess I disagree with Alan here. I am not that worried about a guy who hasn't been a head coach before. I think the idea that the Lakers can't be a starter job is sort of somewhat belied by their own history. And Pat Riley was that was his first gig. And you can be successful as a first-time head coach if you're the right guy, and you can fail as a quote-unquote retread if you're the wrong one. And so I feel like a guy like Darvin Ham would be able to walk into a locker room and have a ton of respect. He's a guy who's built that up over the course of his career. And it really comes down to who can you put around you, how good are you as a communicator and all that. I think there are certain guys, maybe to Alan's point, that wouldn't succeed as well as a first-time coach. Guys like Darvin Ham, I think, would be okay. I wouldn't worry about that, at least with him.
The pushback I would have is this. I'd say that if the front office decided, hey, let's bring in somebody that's never actually been a head coach, you want them to kind of, as best as they can, stand by your decision. This is our guy. We don't care about the outside noise. We have our opinions from our main players, but we think this guy can lead us. Then that's okay. I think a lot of times, you fall into a category of the Lakers. When you're the head coach of the Lakers, Frank Vogel was a coach for 3 or 4 years. One of those years, he ends up winning an NBA championship. And then before you know it, it's not good enough what he was doing. We know what happened this year. There's just so much pressure. You would hope experience got a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, and I might be somewhere in the middle of you guys, though. It just depends on who that person is.
Pick a lane, Trudell.
Right? It depends on who the coach is, and it depends on if it's somebody that you already have some level of familiarity with. But the best coach isn't always necessarily the most experienced. Otherwise, that experienced coach that's available maybe wouldn't be available.
Right, and there's nobody out on the market right now that you look at and you say, that guy is an obvious 100%
perfect
somebody
fit.
who's been Terry Stotts, a name people like, but, there are reasons Terry Stotts got fired in Portland. You can look at a lot of different names. Nobody's perfect out there. And so I like that the Lakers aren't cutting themselves off, at the very least, from this batch of candidates who could be very good.
Well, there's certainly no Phil Jackson out there, right? And according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, Phil will be consulting with the Lakers in their head coach search this offseason. Of course, a report there. But the NBA's greatest coach ever, in my opinion, certainly, Jackson won 5 titles with the Lakers, and according to Woj, also consulted the Lakers in their hiring of Frank Vogel. So back in March, The Athletic had reported that Jackson was in frequent contact about team matters all season long. Guys, this is always a tricky one. I'm not sure that the Zen Master being involved should come as some sort of a shock. We also don't know to what degree that he is. I know, Brian, you spent time, as I did back in the day, covering Phil. And covering Phil, by the way, a very enjoyable experience if you want to just learn about basketball, have some fun. What do you make of all of this, and is it even news? Is it anything?
Well, the part that I really liked was when they had to sort of shoot down the idea that Phil was interested in taking the job himself at 76 years old with, like, rebuilt hips. Like, okay, I'm glad we've cleared that up.
Although rebuilt hips,
he's bionic.
Hips are actually an easier surgery.
Would he still need the chair?
Yeah,
anymore?
Michael Thompson moving around great with his new hip. Yeah, you see Michael
running around.
Just saying.
I don't have a problem with it per se. I think it's important that the Lakers have a process, and they have kind of a chain of command, if you will, where everybody understands where the input is coming from and who ultimately is making these choices. And if you can ask Phil Jackson questions about a basketball mind or something like that, you might as well go ahead and consult him. He's, as you say, arguably the greatest coach of all time. I don't know exactly what his role is in the process, though, and I think that's the muddy part, is to make sure that some of these external voices, whether it's Phil Jackson, Magic Johnson, whatever, don't complicate sort of the people who are inside the building.
I think that's the question that's been brought up the most, at least it seems like this offseason. So I'll use the Phil as an example. Why, if Phil Jackson's giving advice to the Lakers front office and Genie, I think there was a lot of noise around that these last 24 hours. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, it's Phil Jackson. I look at it the way you do. I think the question comes down to is, okay, you're going to get your input from all these different individuals. Ultimately, is there one person saying, thank you for your opinion, thank you for your angle on this, but now I'm going to take all that information and I'm going to make the final decision? And I think, the term of too many cooks in the kitchen, I don't know if that's the case with the Lakers, but I think that's been brought up, and that you hope is clarified.
Right. I think we all know who that person is. It's Austin Reeves.
Yes.
Can't argue with that. All right. How about another Phil Jackson transition? Speaking of Phil Jackson.
Hey, everybody, guess what? It's time for Fill It Up!
Now, I don't know if you guys knew this was coming, but how about a little round of Fill It Up? And we know that Phil had a lot of success in the postseason, guys. But who else has? All right, time for you to guess the NBA coaches who joined Phil on the list of most playoff wins. I'm going to give you number 1. Okay, spoiler, it is Phil Jackson. He has the most wins ever. Now, it's up to you guys to get the final 9. Please alternate, combine. Brian,
is it like a competition? Does one of us get eliminated? I'm going to say Greg Popovich.
At my discretion. Popovich is number 3.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, let's throw a little Pat Riley in the mix there.
That is number 2. And by the way, Phil Jackson routinely took Greg Popovich to the woodshed, and we should just remember that in the postseason. Just throwing it out there. Okay.
Maybe you're campaigning. You want him to take the job at 76.
It's just facts.
Jerry Sloan.
Jerry Sloan, yes, number 7. Okay. All right. I like it so far, guys.
Might not have enough years on this, but I'm going to throw it out. Steve Kerr on there?
Steve Kerr is number 9.
Okay.
Wow. I would not have thought that.
Yeah, 82 wins for Steve Kerr. And by the way, Phil's number is 229, Riley 171. So a long way to go for some of these guys.
How about Rudy T?
Rudy T, that is your first.
That's actually a good guess.
It was a good guess. It was a terrible guess because it's not on the board.
It was 12.
But it's 12 on the board. But it was a reasonable.
Yeah, stop stalling, Slee.
All right.
I'm just helping him out.
Daly on there?
Who's that? Chuck Daly?
Chuck Daly. That's a good one.
No.
But see, I agree with Alan. He should be.
Do you guys want hints yet?
Yes.
Or are you still, okay. Well, think about the second greatest franchise of all time.
You got to put the Celtics on there. Yep.
Yeah. What's his face? Red Auerbach.
That's what's this? Sure. Yeah. So Red is number 6.
Yeah. Who's a what's it?
99 wins, and I would stay in Boston. Sliwa.
Casey Jones.
Casey Jones.
That's
Okay.
what I was going to say. Somebody
Number
might have said
10.
Doc, but that would have been wrong. Is it Doc? Doc's in there?
I'd put Doc
Are
on
you
there.
sure
Yeah,
it's
that's
wrong?
a- that's a-
Okay.
that's a
Yeah,
good guess.
there's
There's
Doc.
been a lot of teams.
Doc
All right,
Rivers in
so
there.
as you can see, only 2 left, and here's one of these coaches is still active, and the other retired years ago, but then started to coach colleges here and there.
All right, one still active. All right, let's think of this real quick. One still active. We have.
For the still active coach, he is considered one of the better coaches in the league.
Well, I was going to say Spoelstra.
Is
but-
he been around? Is
Eric
it so?
Spoelstra, number 8, yeah, 91 playoff wins.
91.
Yep.
I just really
And
thought he would have been
I have a
around
feeling
long
I
enough.
don't know number 5.
The last coach here. So let's see.
Randy Fund.
I'll just give you a couple kind of key words. Kansas.
It's not Randy Fund?
No.
Bernie Bickerstaff.
No. Okay.
Winningest coach by
How about-
percentage of
how
all
about his
time in Lakers
name?
history.
His name is a color.
Vanderblue.
Good player, you know.
His
Spent
name
some time
is
in the G
color.
League.
So we'll take out all my
So-
other guesses of Mike Dunleavy, and I was going to start throwing out some other names.
How
out there.
about
Michael Redd.
let's see, coached Allen Iverson amongst other players?
Oh, Larry Brown.
Oh,
There-
Larry
there
Brown.
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Nicely done,
We
guys.
appreciate your help there.
No, that was
Needed your
that
help
He's
was
there.
speckled.
that was
needed your help
impressive.
there.
That was impressive.
Was it?
I mean, it
think
wasn't
was.
great, but it was definitely
I'm
good.
not sure I would call that impressive.
Anyway, ahead on Access, Anthony Davis and the Lakers never reached their full potential this past year, obviously. Ahead, we're going to discuss how important it's going to be to get a healthy brow back heading into next season. Plus, LeBron is eligible to sign a contract extension this summer. Lakers